Hello again, Shana. So from my viewpoint, this is the perfect working draft. You've done all the hard work figuring out what the major divisions, finding the sources, incorporating all the information, but you've still left me some things to do. So let's take a look at your paper. I'll say a couple of things in this first paragraph. As a general rule, in this kind of construction, in an age or in a time, I use the word when after it. If you're talking about time, it seems to me that when is more appropriate than where. So, in a country where technology is rising is one thing, but in an age or in a time, I usually use when. You increasingly see people write stuff like this, but I think their editors are missing it. So just keep that in mind going forward. In your thesis, one of the things I'd suggest here is to consider whether or not you have 3 divisions or 4. I'm pretty confident you have 4. And then what that would necessitate is really creating 4 body paragraphs, and that's a simple thing to do. I know most people are trained to think in terms of 3 divisions and 3 body paragraphs, and I certainly kind of push that in the models that I gave in class. But you let the actual content determine how many divisions you have. So specifically what I think you've got here is this section on the connection, the new side of the artist, more authentic sound, the health benefits. These are the 2 that you seem to almost force into the same paragraph, and I just don't see it working. I would definitely think you need to break health benefits off, maybe research it a little farther, bring in another source to help develop it if you need to develop that paragraph more, but the major thing I'd suggest is to split these up. One other thing you might consider is that normally as you organize a paragraph, I recommend that people move from either the least important to the most important, or the most obvious to the least obvious. And if that health benefit is the most surprising kind of benefit you've identified, then you might actually move that to the last, right toward it. I think most people would get what you mean about connection and authentic sound and feeding off the energy of others. But if that actually turns out to be health benefits to it, then maybe that's the order you go with. I think this first one where you have the power to make people feel more connected to and see a new side of their favorite artist. Maybe this is better if you go simplify it to the power to help people, the power to connect people to and see a new side of their favorite artist. All right, so that's what I'd say about your thesis. One of the things that is, and you do this a couple of times, and this may be a first draft thing, you may plan to go back and do these, but if the end of chapter 3 of They Say I Say, one of their best hints or tips is never call a quote. I think if you remember in that chapter, it's a quote by Shakespeare says, something like that. Well, what we're really trying to say is Shakespeare says. Now, the tricky part here is that you've got a source that doesn't have an author. So a couple of things are going on there. In the first citation, where you have the title in parentheses, use a shortened version of the title and, of course, put it in quotation marks again to indicate that it's being used as a title. Now, and then rethink the signal phrases that you've got. I'll just drive you back to the end of chapter 3 to think about this. Again, if it's according to the article, or this article shows, that might be your way around the fact that you don't have an author to include. I also made the note that this quote seems to be doing a lot of work, and what I mean by that is that, I didn't see anything in the quote that jumped out to me to be, quotable, let's put it that way. It doesn't seem to make as significant a point. It says what you want to say in this paragraph, but it seems to me that it's not anything that you couldn't have come up with on your own. That doesn't mean quote it, but you introduce the quote, you follow up on the quote. I'm not sure the quote itself shows how powerful live music is. If they have an example, in the article, then maybe that is going to show better how powerful live music is. It might, down here, I'm questioning as the singer is doing this, it certainly seems to me that what the singer is doing is singing or performing, so there may be a better verb there. Obviously you don't want to say as the singer is singing, but that seems to be the situation. Acting in this particular case, I wasn't real sure. I mean, I get the idea that really what you're talking about here is the attitude, kind of interest, excitement that the performer is bringing. But acting, of course, with entertainers means something else. Choice of words, if they're singing a song, I'm not sure there's a big choice of words. There is phrasing, there is, I guess, conveying the emotion of a song. Is something going on there, but I don't think it's necessarily the choice of words. I think one of the suggestions I had here is improvising, but I'm not even quite sure that's what you're getting at. What you seem to be getting at is how the performer is connecting emotionally with the audience, or whether they're just sort of phoning it in for that particular performance. Let's see. Again, here's a quote. And here that's really probably unnecessary. Well. And again, it's that live music article where you don't have an author, and so clearly you can't say it's Smith shows or something like that. This is probably a better quote than the first one you included from that article. All right. I think further, again, is maybe one of those words that has to do with sequence or time. I think all you really mean here is even more than connection. You get to the sound quality, and you'll see that this paragraph gets developed pretty well. You've got the article by Backus, nice quote by Backus. That all works out pretty well. Simply, when you do the city-state, there's a comma that comes before the state and after the state. That's what this little great mark means. It's identical to what we do with date and year, so this is actually place and date is what this is talking about. Then your example from Nashville, that's all really good. And then there's this jump to the health. So I think you can see that these really don't fit in the same paragraph. I think you can simply indent, start a new paragraph here. You have the article by Stacy Nick. You have the quote. And again, since that's a topic that is kind of surprising, you might actually see if you can locate another source that gets at this health question in a slightly different way. So in your original plan, then that becomes sort of the third division. You move to the fourth one, which is the ability to feed off energy. I'll leave it up to you whether you want to leave this here. There's certainly obviously nothing wrong with your sequence of ideas. It's just a logical progression of ideas from most obvious to least obvious. Sometimes works. Last thing I'll say is the source you have was Swarbrick et al. This is an academic article. It's a good find. I think I wouldn't call it a live music article written. If you look at the journal that it appears in, we might say it's actually Frontiers in Psychology. So you might actually sort of suggest that, a psychological study or an article in a psychology journal written by Dana Swarbrick et al. And you kind of see what you do with the authors. But again, as I've kind of pointed out before, you can certainly rewrite this so that it's in a article published in a psychological journal. Dana Swarbrick et al. Announce. The authors doesn't need to be repeated here. You can actually use the authors in the next sentence, and then later use the Swarbrick et al. in the parenthetical citation. But again, it's an interesting article, and using the academic journal, probably more important than Frontiers of Psychology. The title might be to point out that this is an article that comes from a psychology journal. And the last point, as you move to this conclusion, when deciding between listening to live music or recording music, my question here is this a decision? Is this something people decide? I mean, people obviously decide to go to live music performances, but I don't think they're consciously making a choice. Most people listen to recorded music in their day-to-day lives because that's the way it works. So it may be, again, if you introduce this as a choice, or maybe I think what the decision people should be making in your mind is that they should put more live music in their lives. So maybe just consider whether or not that's the right way to kick off this final paragraph. But all of those sort of things aside, this all looks fine. I will say that one of the things that's most impressive about you as a writer is your recognition of the right topic, the right size topic for, whatever this is, 1,500 words or so. This is very doable. It's an interesting topic. You make it very interesting. So you're a good reader of assignments, but also understanding, having sort of the right tool for the right job. And this is the right tool for this particular job. So I look forward to reading the final draft of it. In fact, once this is cleaned up, I might ask your permission to use this as an example of this assignment in future courses. You check all the boxes on this assignment. All right. Well, thanks. Look forward to seeing your final project. Have a good weekend.